You
I had
lied,
worked
now
for this
what?
promotion for months. Late nights, flawless presentations, client calls that stretched past dinner, endless reports refined until they shined. Every number, every chart, every strategic recommendation had my fingerprints all over it. Yet, when the announcement came, it wasn't my name on the email. Instead, it was Greg. Greg, the co-worker who smiled too easily, who praised me while taking credit for ideas I had spent weeks perfecting. I blinked at my screen, disbelief freezing me for a heartbeat. The office chatter buzzed behind me. Congratulations flowing to him like water over a dam. My stomach twisted. My promotion stolen. I wanted to lash out, to storm into HR or the boss's office and demand justice. But I caught myself. Anger was hot, blinding, dangerous, and I needed clarity, not fire. I inhaled, letting the initial shock settle, then opened a new folder on my laptop. Evidence, proof, patterns of deception, emails, chat logs, version histories. Everything Greg had twisted or claimed as his own. The plan was simple. Document, observe, and wait. I didn't need revenge fueled by rage. I needed it fueled by facts, precision, and timing. Karma, I realized, wasn't something to pray for. It was something you set in motion carefully, deliberately. For the next few days, I maintained my professionalism. I smiled. I congratulated Greg on earning the promotion. I attended meetings and contributed with quiet brilliance. All the while, I collected proof of his misrepresentations. Meetings where he presented my ideas as his own, emails subtly edited to omit my name, client reports shifted subtly to give him credit. By the end of the week, my dossier was complete. I had timelines, corroborating emails, screenshots, and even notes from team meetings where my contributions were verbally ignored. It wasn't personal drama anymore. It was airtight evidence of deceit. And unlike raw anger, it couldn't be dismissed as sour grapes. The tension in the office was palpable. Greg strutted around, unaware that every misstep, every exaggeration, every little lie had a witness. And I had all of them documented. Karma, I thought with a quiet smirk, wasn't a matter of chance. It was scheduled, tracked, and about to arrive. By Friday afternoon, I scheduled a meeting with HR. My pulse quickened not from fear, but from anticipation. This wasn't just about getting what I deserved. It was about setting the record straight, demonstrating that dishonesty carries consequences, and proving that diligence and integrity always outlast deception. I walked into the HR office, dossier in hand, posture steady, mind sharp. "Thank you for seeing me," I said. "I need to discuss the recent promotion decision." HR raised an eyebrow, folding their hands. Greg's smiling face was still fresh in my mind, the audacity of his claim burning lightly in my chest. But I didn't let it show. I wasn't there to vent. I was there to win. I opened my folder, presenting everything methodically. Evidence first, context second. I highlighted emails, version histories, client feedback. Every piece of proof showing that the promotion had been my work from the start. I let facts, not emotion, cut through the fog of office politics. 2 hours later, HR called me back. The lie was undeniable. Greg's claims were exposed. The truth laid bare. Apologies were offered, corrective measures promised, and the stolen promotion quietly reassigned. Karma, I realized, had arrived precisely on schedule, not through luck, but through meticulous planning and unwavering professionalism. I walked back to my desk, head held high, knowing I had not just acclaimed a title, but reasserted integrity, resilience, and the principle that truth always finds a way to rise. And as I glanced across the office at Greg, slumped in defeat, I allowed myself a small, victorious smile. Some victories don't just feel good. They feel inevitable. Monday morning arrived like a ticking clock, each second louder than the last. I walked into the office, dossier clutched tightly in my hand, but not for immediate confrontation. The plan was subtler. Karma wasn't about shouting truth into the void. It was about letting the very system Greg relied upon collapse under the weight of his lies. From the moment I sat at my desk, I observed every interaction, every whispered excuse, every exaggerated claim he made about projects he hadn't actually led. I cataloged it mentally, noting the small cracks that had begun to appear in his carefully curated image. Greg thrived on perception. He believed confidence alone could mask incompetence. I intended to prove otherwise. By mid-morning, the first signs of strain appeared. A client called asking for clarification on a report Greg had presented last week. The numbers didn't add up. His answers were vague, deflecting blame subtly toward other team members. Yet every misstep was being logged silently in my mind and on my growing spreadsheet of evidence. I maintained a composed exterior, offering only polite suggestions to the client to resolve the discrepancies. Behind the smile, my strategy unfolded. Allow Greg's lies to surface naturally and record everything. Patience was my ally. It amplified every small mistake he made. Each inaccuracy, each half-truth, each fabricated credit became another piece of proof, invisible to him but visible to those who would soon hold the authority to act. By lunchtime, the office tension was palpable. Colleagues whispered in hushed tones near the copier or coffee machine. Some offered small, knowing glances in my direction, the acknowledgement that someone had seen through Greg's facade. Others avoided my gaze entirely, uncertain if they were about to witness a quiet but decisive power shift. I didn't mind. Let them observe. Let them remember that patience and evidence matter more than complaints shouted into empty corridors. Afternoon brought another opportunity. A critical team presentation was scheduled, and Greg had volunteered, or rather, had forced himself to lead it. The documents had been prepared weeks in advance, most of the groundwork mine, but the presentation was a show. I observed from the back, arms crossed, while he strutted to front, confidence oozing from every step. But confidence cannot substitute for substance. As he began speaking, his errors multiplied. Charts were mislabeled. Key data points contradicted prior client communications. He stumbled over figures I had carefully calculated. The audience, including senior staff, exchanged brief, questioning glances. I remained composed, jotting notes, recording every discrepancy. Each mistake was a nail in the coffin of his fabricated competence. After the presentation, he tried to dismiss the questions with forced humor, deflecting inquiries that exposed his lack of knowledge. The senior staff weren't convinced. Subtle murmurs of doubt began to circulate. He noticed, of course, the corners of his mouth twitching with irritation. He didn't know it yet, but the narrative was shifting. The story that had propelled him into temporary favor was unraveling, thread by thread. Later in the afternoon, an internal email chain revealed another inconsistency, a claim he had made to HR about leading a client project independently, ignoring the contributions of the rest of the team. I quickly cross-referenced my saved emails and meeting notes. Every false statement, every misrepresented achievement was neatly cataloged, time-stamped, and ready for presentation. My dossier had grown far beyond what I initially imagined. Karma, I realized, was accelerating without my interference. Greg's own overconfidence had built the scaffolding for his downfall. By the end of the day, I sent a discreet but pointed summary to HR, phrased carefully to highlight procedural discrepancies rather than personal grievance. The goal was not revenge. The goal was clarity, accountability, and letting the facts speak louder than office politics or forced smiles. Walking to my car that evening, I felt a strange combination of fatigue and exhilaration. Each misstep Greg made, each exposed exaggeration, was a victory of strategy over impulse. The stolen promotion had not been regained, not yet, but the momentum had shifted. The tides were turning. I knew the final act would require patience. Immediate confrontation could backfire, especially with HR still processing the evidence. I needed leverage, timing, and precision by letting Greg dig himself deeper, each lie building upon the last. I was orchestrating a scenario in which truth and integrity would inevitably prevail. That night, I reviewed my growing evidence folder one last time before bed. Emails, client notes, meeting minutes, every piece meticulously organized. I wasn't motivated by revenge. I was motivated by justice, efficiency, and restoring the rightful balance. Karma, I realized, wasn't mystical. It was methodical, and I had scheduled it down to the minute. The following morning, I arrived early again, calm but focused. Greg walked past me, chatting loudly with a colleague, oblivious of the fact that the very machinery he had used to build his temporary triumph was now pointing directly at him. I smiled quietly, let him enjoy his hollow victory a little longer. Soon, it would crumble, and when it did, there would be no question about who had earned it. By lunchtime, subtle shifts became undeniable. HR had begun internal inquiries, quietly, with pointed questions that mirrored the discrepancies I had documented. Senior staff had started reviewing the presentations he had led. And Greg? He remained blissfully unaware that the walls he had constructed from lies were beginning to close in. That evening, I left the office with a sense of satisfaction that went beyond the anticipation of personal victory. I had learned that patience, evidence, and silent strategy were far more powerful than anger or confrontation. Greg's overconfidence had become his greatest liability, and I had prepared myself to be ready when the moment of reckoning arrived. By the close of the week, the atmosphere in the office was tense, brittle. Whispers of inconsistency followed Greg like shadows. Colleagues glanced at me with quiet curiosity, some with tentative admiration. Karma wasn't abstract anymore. It was tangible, and I knew, deep in my gut, that the final act, the public, undeniable correction of injustice, was just around the corner. Monday arrived like a storm quietly gathering momentum. The office hummed as usual, but beneath the hum was a subtle tension no one dared speak aloud. Greg moved through cubicles with forced confidence, chatting and laughing in that practiced, performative way he had perfected over the months. But the cracks were beginning to show. Every misstep from last week, every exaggeration, every fabricated accomplishment had begun to cast shadows over his carefully polished image. I sat at my desk, fingers lightly tapping keyboard, reviewing my dossier once more. Every email, every client note, every timestamp contribution lined up perfectly, an unassailable record of the truth. The promotion I deserved had been stolen, yes, but the evidence of wrongdoing had grown so thick it could no longer be ignored. At 10 a.m., HR sent a subtle internal message, a meeting request with me. My pulse quickened, but I remained calm. This was the culmination of my strategy, the moment when preparation and patience converged. I collected my thoughts, making sure each point was precise, each document clearly annotated. I had rehearsed the presentation in my mind, imagining how each fact would land, how each error in Greg's narrative would reveal itself. I entered the HR office, dossier in hand, and found 2 HR representatives waiting. Their expressions were neutral, professional, but there was curiosity behind the eyes. They had sensed the tension. "Thank you for coming," one of them began. "We've noticed some discrepancies in recent project reports and presentations. Would you walk us through them?" I opened my folder carefully, spreading printouts and annotated notes across the desk. "Of course," I said calmly. "I've compiled a timeline showing my contributions, as well as instances where credit was misattributed to Greg." For the next hour, I walked him through every detail. Screenshots of emails, meeting minutes highlighting my input, client acknowledgments, every piece meticulously ordered. Each time Greg's claims arose in conversation, I countered with evidence. No anger, no drama. Just facts, undeniable, precise, and clearly presented. By the end of the meeting, the room was silent. The HR representatives exchanged glances, their fingers resting on documents as though weighing the weight of truth itself. Then the first words came. "This is thorough," one said slowly. "It appears that Greg's representations are inconsistent with the documented record." I nodded, keeping my expression measured. "I'm not here to create conflict. I'm here to clarify the record. The promotion I was denied was a result of misattributed work, not oversight on your part. I simply want the truth to be recognized." HR leaned back, a small sign of relief crossing their faces. They had the authority, but they lacked the evidence. Until now. "We'll review this and speak with Greg," one said. "We take these matters seriously." Meanwhile, I returned to my desk, calm but aware of the subtle shifts in energy around the office. Colleagues were glancing my way, a mixture of curiosity and admiration in their eyes. Even Greg, passing by, seemed to notice the quiet intensity in my demeanor. He had no idea that the web of his own lies had begun to unravel. By mid-afternoon, subtle messages began arriving from HR, requests for clarification, questions about dates and contributions, follow-ups on client communications. Each email was a quiet unraveling of the narrative Greg had tried to control. He moved nervously through the office, increasingly defensive, trying to maintain authority, while every inquiry chipped away at his credibility. It was during a team meeting that the first real cracks became public. Greg attempted to present a project update, confident as ever, but HR had circulated a summary of discrepancies among the team beforehand. Colleagues asked pointed questions he could not answer without revealing the truth. Beads of sweat formed on his forehead as he stumbled through explanations, contradictions emerging with each attempt to recover. I sat quietly, hands folded, letting events unfold. I did not intervene. The strategy was simple. Let the system expose the deception. Greg's own overconfidence and reliance on appearances were his undoing. Every pause, every hesitant answer, every misaligned fact was proof for HR and the executives watching. Karma, methodical and precise, was performing its work. By the end of the day, Greg was cornered. HR requested an immediate meeting with him. Alone, his confident stride faltered as he left, glancing at me with a mixture of frustration and fear. I allowed myself a quiet, satisfied smile. This wasn't about humiliation. It was about truth, about balance restored, and about demonstrating that integrity always outlasts deceit. Walking out that evening, I felt the tension in the office shift palpably. The stolen promotion was not yet reassigned, but the outcome was inevitable. Greg's lies had been exposed to those with authority. The foundation of his temporary victory had crumbled. The final act, when the promotion would be rightfully restored and karma would fully manifest, was approaching. As I prepared for following day, I reviewed my dossier once more, ensuring every document was accounted for. The careful accumulation of evidence, the patient observation of Greg's patterns, the strategic timing, it all pointed to one thing. Justice would be served, and not by luck or emotion, but by meticulous preparation and unwavering focus. The office that felt oppressive and unfair now seemed charged with anticipation. Colleagues whispered, glanced at each other, and watched as the inevitable correction drew nearer. Even Greg, oblivious to the meticulous plotting I had executed, was trapped by his own hubris. By nightfall, I walked home with a sense of calm triumph. The stolen promotion was still technically out of reach, but the wheels of karma were in motion. Truth was now a living, breathing force in the office, undeniable, documented, and unstoppable. The next day would bring the resolution, the final reckoning that would restore not just my promotion, but the principle that deceit cannot withstand the light of careful, deliberate truth. Tuesday morning felt electric. The office was quieter than usual, not with calm, but with anticipation. Word had spread, subtle whispers, raised eyebrows, and hurried glances at emails, that HR had begun their review of Greg's claims. The air seemed charged, each keystroke and phone ring resonating more heavily than before. I arrived early, not because I needed to, but because I wanted to witness the final moments unfold. My desk, organized meticulously, felt like a command center rather than a cubicle. The chair beneath me was comfortable, familiar, a silent reminder that control is most potent when paired with preparation. By mid-morning, the first official sign appeared, a meeting invite with HR and my boss, marked promotion review urgent. My pulse quickened, but I remained outwardly calm, exuding a quiet confidence that only comes from knowing the truth is on your side. Inside the HR office, the air was taut. My boss sat to the side, eyebrows drawn, fingers tapping rhythmically on the desk. Greg, when he arrived, was pale, shifting uneasily in his seat. The difference between us was stark. I carried certainty. He carried fear. HR began with procedural formalities, then swiftly moved to the heart of the matter. We have reviewed all submissions, timelines, and communications regarding promotion. There are discrepancies we need to clarify. Greg opened his mouth, but the words faltered under the weight of documented evidence. Emails, meeting minutes, client communications. Every false claim he had made was meticulously countered. I presented nothing new at this stage. My previous submissions had already laid the groundwork. Now it was merely a matter of observation. The room grew tense as HR systematically addressed each misrepresentation. Greg's protest became defensive, fragmented, and unconvincing. He pointed to minor contributions, tried to assert influence over isolated tasks, but the record spoke louder than his assertions. Every claim was met with counterproof, precise, undeniable, chronological. Finally, HR leaned forward, their expression sober but firm. Given the documented contributions, it is clear that the promotion should have rightfully been awarded to the original candidate, you. They looked at me. We apologized for the oversight and the misattribution of credit. The promotion will be formally reassigned immediately. Relief washed over me, but I did not smile too broadly. This was not gloating. This was validation, proof that diligence, patience, and unwavering integrity always triumph over deceit. My eyes met Greg's briefly. He looked defeated, shrunk in his chair. His confidence evaporated. Karma had arrived, precise and inevitable. Walking back to my desk, the office seemed to shift around me. Colleagues offered quiet congratulations, some with smiles, others with barely concealed astonishment at the reversal. The energy in the department had changed. A subtle hum of respect, acknowledgement, and, for the first time in months, genuine relief. By afternoon, official emails confirmed the promotion. The title, responsibilities, and accompanying recognition had been formally updated. My work, previously stolen in appearance, was now recognized properly. It was a small moment in the larger corporate ecosystem, but for me, it was monumental, a tangible proof that integrity, when paired with strategy and evidence, cannot be ignored. Greg remained in the office, quiet, subdued. He did not apologize. He did not attempt to reclaim influence. He simply existed in the shadow of his own exposure. And in that, there was a lesson far larger than any single promotion. Actions have consequences, and dishonesty, no matter how polished, eventually unravels. The week proceeded with newfound equilibrium. Projects moved smoothly, client communications were handled efficiently, and meetings ran without the tension that Greg's false narratives had previously introduced. The office now had clarity. Contribution, not confidence, dictated value. Sitting at my desk in my newly confirmed role, I reflected on the process. The stolen promotion had been a test, a challenge that forced patience, careful documentation, and strategic action. I had learned that immediate anger is a weak weapon. Evidence, timing, and composed persistence are far more potent. Karma is not random. It is often methodical, requiring observation, planning, and execution. By Friday, the office had settled into its new rhythm. Greg kept his distance, avoiding unnecessary interactions. I continued my work, efficient, professional, and acknowledged. The victory was complete, yet quiet, a testament to the fact that the most profound triumphs are rarely loud. As I packed up for the weekend, my thoughts lingered on the lessons learned. Patience and preparation are as important as skill. Truth, when meticulously documented and calmly presented, is unstoppable. And integrity, once restored and recognized, commands respect that deception can never achieve. That night, walking home under the city lights, I allowed myself a small, satisfied smile. The promotion had been stolen. Karma had arrived. And the office, once a battleground of lies and ambition, had been set straight. Victory had been earned, fair and unassailable, and the lesson was clear. Honesty, strategy, and patience always win.